Hello, and welcome to an overview of effective communication from school leaderships. If you've followed some of my posts and a lot of the work that I've presented, you'll remember that I've spent 14 years within the public and private education sectors of education K to 12 in Massachusetts. And in this time, it's been a common thread, whether it be public or private, whether it's elementary or high school, that it feels as though leadership in their communication with their staff members has felt unauthentic or ineffective throughout the times. It's especially hard in a digital age when it's so easy for someone to send an email or create a Google Doc, but it absolutely feels as though we're sort of drowning now in the technology, and it's hard to find and access the things that we really need when we need them. So the real question is, what does effective communication look like? How can it help the staff members? How can it help us become better at our jobs within education and really benefit the students? So as I moved on, and you'll see here now, the different learning objectives was really just the overview of what makes effective communication for school leadership. What are the factors? What defines it? What are things that have helped others in viewing that and seeing that that is effective? What I really focused on was a qualitative study, because I believe that teachers hold a lot of valuable information, but what's very difficult is getting it from them. They're spending most of their day with kids. They go home to their own families or to do their work that gets them caught up at school that they couldn't do during the day. So to really have time to tap into the minds of a teacher is very difficult to find that time. The idea really and the purpose of this was I originally had proposed it as top 5 researched methods of school leadership and communications. I ended up boiling it down to a fewer than that in what I was trying to do, but I found a lot of connecting threads that really made it line up as we were looking at it here. The final product really was just the research conducted through school leadership and their communication methods. I reached out through LinkedIn. I tried to pull students, teachers that were within my school. I pulled old friends that I'd worked with at other places as well. That way I have a wider selection and a broader view as I was looking at this for data as well. The biggest factor, I think, of all the research was trying to see why people felt effective communication was done through certain pathways. How could it help? And are those methods that I could suggest to my own administration to help really, firm up what we were doing and how it worked. Really, the foundation questions here on this next slide is, what does effective communication look like? If you don't create a baseline, it's really difficult to try to move from there, and then we're just all arguing about different points that don't really make sense because there's no definition of it. Another thing was, can effective communication come in different forms? Just because one principal is an extrovert and they love being out there in those staff meetings and presenting, that might not be what's true for all. It doesn't necessarily mean that that works best for all, because really we're all different. So our leadership styles would all be different. The introvert versus the extrovert and how they present. Sometimes an email might be more effective depending on what the information it is that's being passed. And the other thing I found very intriguing is, do all individuals find value through the same forms of communication? I mean, I know personally for me, I'd much rather have a face-to-face for 5 minutes, catch me up on everything, let me hear it, versus trying to sift through emails and find that one piece of information I was looking for about student XYZ, and then I can't even find it. I'm spending 10-15 minutes looking when I could have just had a quick overview from a face-to-face meeting. One of the big things I came up next with was the Harvard Business School. There was an online section for it that had really posted just a variety of methods that they felt were effective methods of communication. You could see here, as they've just, laundry list listed here: adapting communication styles based on your audience, active listening, transparency, clarity, asking open-ended questions, empathy, open body language, and receiving and implementing feedback. And when we hear these things, we almost feel like they're common sense, that they make sense. well, shouldn't somebody be empathetic if they're a leader? Shouldn't somebody provide some level of transparency so that we're not trying to guess their methodologies or what they want us to do? Clarity. If we don't have a clean vision, how can we as a staff really come together and make things better? So it really is interesting. Well, they list out these 8 different methods of effective communication that they almost feel commonsensical, while they may not be to others. Immediately, in other views, I go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, because the Global Leadership Network presented one set or 3 standards of effective communication that I loved, and it really reminded me of this, because truly, like with the hierarchy of needs, you're looking at like you're just going to take care of your physical needs first, and then it builds up, and then you're sort of, building your esteem and believing in yourself, and then now you can actually create something that's beautiful. So I love the hierarchy needs, as I kind of think about it and how it translates to my teaching my students. And when I saw the Global Leadership Network coming up in a second with their methods, I thought it was extremely effective and extremely powerful, connecting to that and what it looks like. And as you see here, it's built on 3 levels. The first one really was an effective leader may communicate directly through their words. So they just say, okay, here's exactly what I want. XYZ. This is what's important. This is what we need to do. Which I feel sometimes that's needed. Sometimes that base level is just what you need to do to get the job done. Let's give the information and move on. Level 2 is probably where I see that most leaders, if they are effective leaders, start to move into, where they don't just say the things that need to get done. You start to see that they'll do them. And now that doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing it their 2 hands, but how they delegate, or how they show that there's motion towards a goal, whether it's through time dedicated to something, staffing dedicated to something. But communicating through actions, I think, is so much more powerful than just through words. Words don't talk well, and I know that that's sort of ironic when I say that, but the interesting thing is I really don't think they do. I mean, we can look at politicians and the promises they make constantly year to year. It doesn't matter what party you represent. I think all politicians fall into the camp of, well, let's just promise something regardless of the effectiveness or the possibility of making it happening. So I think that's what's difficult with the level 1, and moving to level 2, I think it's better. But really, level 3 is where you're working for some of the best leaders, that their vision is one that they have preached and the staff believes in. So the staff, the employees, start to preach what the leader it desires, and I think that's really powerful because they've done such a good job prepping everybody for all of that it's a tangible product and everyone starts to preach it. And I really think that I've never seen that, unfortunately, in the many places I've gone. I rarely have seen level 2, and level 1 is just the basic, what I think every leader provides. So the one thing I wish the study would have given me more is if we felt as though how many of these levels were reached in our own experiences when working with leaders and administrators or bosses or supervisors and things of that nature. And then that finally sort of brings us to the survey itself. So while he had sent it out, the respondents was low on this one, just a limited amount of time to really push it and get more people to do it. But it was really interesting because a lot of these people had worked not just for one boss, and they had multiple leaders. And you'll see here that in the questions that I asked, many of them don't think their leadership were communicating other than words, and it was really empty. And that I just found intriguing. I didn't feel alone, which was nice when I thought about the fact that I wish I had worked for more effective leaders and people who practiced what they preached, and that they were able to be there for you and support you. And again, what's amazing about this chart here is you'll see that 50% of the respondents had been in education for 11 to 15 years, so it's not their first rodeo. Only one person had been 1 to 5 years, and then it was kind of a mixed bag through that. This little graph was interesting on the chart as I had submitted this, because it was broken into those skills of what do you believe are the most important: being an active listener, transparent, clarity, ability to ask open-ended questions. So really, all the value is there for all of them. The lowest one was the one person who sort of pulled, saying that it's middle of the road about ability to ask open-ended questions. But I think this is sort of a loaded question too, all of these, because I think all of these are great traits. But it is clear that when you're looking at this, the heaviest hitter was the active listener. I once was talking to somebody about the value of being an active listener, because often too many people try to listen just to respond, or they listen to try to speak. And I think what's the problem with that is it doesn't really give the speaker anything. Like, if you're just listening to somebody and then you just want to say something, that's not value added to what the conversation is. That's just empty responses just for the sake of speaking. So I do kind of agree in this sense of this chart that being an active listener, actually caring about what the person is saying and not interjecting and not stepping on them, these are hugely important skills that are truly needed as we think about how these all function. And then this one was on the next page here. I missed that. But yeah, this one was also a higher ranked one for asking questions and being able to communicate. And this one more reflects body language. I didn't have it labeled here, but the body language. So it's important how you look and how you're listening to staff members as they work with you. Are you presenting crossed arms and you're showing that you're not actually listening, or what is your body language that sort of speaks to what is happening in that moment in communicating? This little last piece here, I thought, again, was another one because I wanted to phrase it. I didn't want to lead the question here, but I really wanted to have an idea of, do you think you're getting too many emails? Do you think you're having too many staff meetings? And it was really interesting because it sort of was a wacky split on all these. Some people thought there were too many emails, some were just the right amount, but I did think it was interesting because no one said that, yeah, we're not getting enough emails. Emails are cheap, emails are free, so you look at companies that use email advertising and they love it because it's so easy to just spam you with it. And I think sometimes administration can be in that mindset too, is it's easy to shoot off an email and then not have to leave the room to go talk to somebody. But I think the value of face-to-face conversations, again, is just direly important. And then the bottom question here, when it comes to in-person communication, I think that was interesting because they're saying the respondents here is really translating that they're receiving too little information in person. And from my experience, I actually agree with that. I think a lot of administration like to keep things on lockdown and don't want to be transparent. I don't know if it's this is above your pay grade thought process, or if this is a method of, we don't have to tell you yet because we don't want to get to it with you. But I did find that absolutely intriguing, that was the bigger swing on this one versus the one person who might have said, yeah, I'm receiving too much information in person, which might be true in a staff meeting if you're sitting for an hour and that's just you're being talked at. I agree that can be in just overwhelming situation, and sometimes can definitely be frustrating as you're really looking at that and how that all forms. And then I sort of think about this in this last one, just conclusions and results. I mean, I reflect on all this very deeply because as somebody who aspires to lead and to be there for others, whether it's a role that is dedicated to leadership or just me doing a job and trying to support fellow team members, I think it's interesting to hear all this. And truly, I've always been a person that believes the in-person is so much more important. I don't believe you can connect truly with a person on a deep level via email. And that is a hill I'm willing to die on. I just have seen too many times where administration uses email communication and those different those forms, and they treat it as the transfer of information, not the connection of people. And I really believe that no matter the job you work, I know this has been highly education based, but no matter the job you work, connecting with people is important, because if you have no connection, they're not going to want to work for you, and they're not going to want to give you their 100%, and they're just going to come in to hit the clock and leave. They're not going to care about issues that they could help solve quickly or troubleshoot with you. So I do find it really intriguing when I look at all of these things and what it means. Now, I think what could help the most would be leadership's reading these things and seeing these effective methods, because realistically, if you're not a good communicator and you know you need to change, it's not something that's going to snap the fingers or wiggle the nose and then all of a sudden it's all better. You need to build towards that, and you need to have an idea that, okay, for the next 1 to 2 years, I'm working on these 2 skills of communication, and I'm going to do more in-person meetings, or sorry, more face-to-face talks with staff members, or I'm going to make sure that I am a better active listener. So I think really for any leadership, they can better themselves if they use these skills and find ways to track it. If they're just so busy saying, yeah, I'm too busy to do this, I've got a million things to do. Well, we all do. We all got 10 million things on our plate at all times. So really, the conclusion from all this is, I think, what Harvard came up in the Global Leadership Network, those are very effective methods. And I really think that if you can use both of them, because again, remember, Harvard really stated the 8 effective ways. The Global Leadership Network really stated the different levels of how those are affecting people. If you could do one, it'll affect the other. If you have effective methods of communicating, then eventually you're going to be acting through words, act through actions, not words. And then if you're doing that right, staff will act through their actions in representing you because they believe in you. So again, I think, this was a wonderful little study for me to kind of do a deeper dive. One of my regrets is just I wish I had more time to get more respondents. I'd be love to see how the data would change if you had like 500 people fill it out versus the 6 to 10 that I was really getting from trying to submit it to about 30, 40, 50 people. But anyways, thanks for listening. Have a great night.